Good evening, everyone. My name is Mika Bondi. I'm chair of the Women's Leadership Circle and the Women's Leadership Network, and we're very excited to be here today. I think most of you know a little bit about the Women's Leadership Network, but I thought I would give you a little bit of a background. It was formed about 7 years ago with a threefold mission. One is to put on great quality programming, which inspires, informs, enlightens people. The second is to create a great community of a supportive group of women and alum and lawyers and non-lawyers and friends of Brooklyn Law School in a very mentoring kind of environment. And the third is philanthropy, to give back, to help the next generation of law leaders from our school and beyond. And so we're delighted that we have actually endowed a student scholarship, so that's a big thing. And then if any of you are interested in joining the Women's Leadership Circle, which is the executive council of the Women's Leadership Network, I'm going to just put it out there. There's now a financial contribution that we're asking everybody to give because schools and things do not run without money. So if you'd like to join the Women's Leadership Circle, for most people it would be $5,000 over 3 years. If you're in a governmental or nonprofit or public service type of role, we invite you to contribute $1,500 over 3 years. And then you just get access to this great community. Of course, you have access to all of us anyway, but it's a great way of giving back and being involved and meeting some amazing women. So I'm gonna turn it over to Dean Meyer for this great program, but I'm really excited about this Esquire to Entrepreneurship program. I think entrepreneurship is something that I've always admired. The grit involved, the inspiration involved, perseverance involved, seeing what's new and what people want next before they even know they need it. I think all of that is really interesting. I also think it's interesting to hear about how you can use your law degree in so many different ways. I was just telling some students the other day, I was in-house counsel, I'm now at a law firm, I was at a law firm. I could, start a business, I could do I could run a nonprofit, I could run for office. I feel like I can do so many things, and I think that's one of the most amazing things about having a law degree and having this kind of entrepreneurial mindset. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Meyer to say a few words, and then we'll get started with the panel. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much, Mika, and I just wanted to be very brief, but just to say welcome to everyone and thank you. What Mika shared about the Women's Leadership Network and the role it plays in supporting our students and the school, our alumni, and describing the world of possibilities that it creates through career pathways and ways that you can go. I've been so impressed with the Women's Leadership Network since arriving at Brooklyn not quite 2 years ago, and seeing the way that it really is real in supporting students through the scholarship, but also supporting alumni and our students in connecting with each other and in thinking about the world of possibilities after Brooklyn Law School. So grateful to all of you for being here, to our distinguished panel of alumna to join us for this, and excited to hear the program that will follow. So with deep thanks again for the support of the network, I'm happy to turn it over to my faculty colleague here at Brooklyn Law School, Professor Olivera Medenica. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dean Meyer. Really appreciate it. And thank you to the Women Leadership Circle for inviting me and the panelists to participate in this panel tonight. This is a really interesting topic, I think, in the legal industry or getting your degree, your JD, and ultimately going into entrepreneurship. And I think if you're going through law school, you're not always thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, but it's such a wonderful calling card to eventually turn into entrepreneurship, and it really arms you with the requisite skills to do so. So by just a show of hands, so I have a sense, how many of you are currently students at Brooklyn Law School? Okay, yes. Yeah. And so the rest of you are alumni, and just to have a sense, how many of you are within 0 to 5 years out of law school? Okay. And 5 to 10 years? Okay. So we have a good representation of, I think, students to, younger, I'm not supposed to say young, but 0 to 5 years and 5 to 10 years. So I think what we're going to talk about today is just give you a sense of the paths that our panelists have taken with entrepreneurship. And we're so fortunate to have these two panelists with us today, Rachel Foster and Katya Sverdlov, who have done really amazing things with their law degree. And when I learned a little bit more about their paths, I was just blown away with what they have managed to accomplish on their own. And entrepreneurship is hard. It requires a lot of creativity, a lot of grit, and a lot of skills. So I'm going to turn to our panelists and let them introduce themselves briefly and what companies they're affiliated with. So Rachel, if you want to just give us a
Can you hear me? So I have a bit of a windy path, which I love, and a few different buckets within in which I work, and I feel like I couldn't have predicted it. I didn't plan for it, and some of it was embracing serendipity and pathways that emerge, and also paths not taken. So I graduated from here. I came in as a public interest Spera Fellow. I was one of 3, and I think there are many more now in each class. But at the time, there were 3 of us. And I had come from being a community organizer and studying human development and family studies and thinking I would go into psychology or social work. And then when I became a community organizer and also worked with a task force for battered women, I wanted to be a much more effective advocate. And I felt that going to law school would allow me to do that. So I came in here with a distinct sort of purpose to go into public interest law. And I did. I worked at the Center for Constitutional Rights over the summer. I was in the federal litigation clinic here, which I loved, the judicial clinic. I started a domestic violence hotline. And then I went to Brooklyn Legal Services, South Brooklyn Legal Services here in the neighborhood, and I just loved it. So I have always been on that pathway of working with women, and particularly with women who are marginalized, who don't have voice, don't have power. And I was in the HIV unit, so I had 80% of my clients were women who were dealing with crises and eviction and domestic violence, and also having HIV or AIDS, and often dying, because it was the 90s. And so I've carried on that path, which ultimately, when you want me to talk about it, led to a few different arenas. But the connective tissue for me between all of them are sort of aspects of my personality and my passions that I've always had. I love animals, so it's not surprising that I started the Brooklyn Cat Cafe. I became a vegetarian at 9 and always had a feeling for animals, so that's not shocking if you know me. I was raised by a social work mother, a pioneer in the field of hospice, and an architect father. So I've always loved art and architecture, and my parents surrounded themselves with artists and creative people. And I've been involved in issues around violence against women, probably from when I was in my late teens. So launching an anti-trafficking coalition also is not out of character. So there's some through lines there.
So that background shaped, the companies that ultimately you started, and we'll circle back and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Katya, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background and briefly about what you do today?
Hi. So this is really hard to follow, but I had a pretty opposite trajectory. So after college, I started on Wall Street, and I worked on Wall Street for 12 years doing investment banking and risk management of mortgage-backed securities and CDOs. And then if any of you saw the movie, The Big Short, there was the big crisis. And so I was right there in that. And so I actually know a lot of the people who are portrayed in that movie. Not the smart ones, the stupid ones, unfortunately. But as I was still working on Wall Street, I actually volunteered for an organization that helped foster kids. And I was so sick of Wall Street by that point. I was like, oh, I think this is what I want to be when I grow up. I want to become a lawyer that protects foster kids. So I went to law school. I convinced Brooklyn Law that this is what I'm going to be. They took me in. I came already with 2 kids in tow. At that point, my younger one was 1, my older one was 5. And I did that for a year, and I hated it. Again, I could not do the family court. So what else was there to do? I had financial background, and I did want to help people. So after law school, I worked for a couple of years for a law firm that did estate planning, and I have my own estate planning law firm. And that has been going on for the last 10 years, and I enjoy it, truly. I actually, my kids laugh that I work with dead people, but for the most part, I work with people who are alive. And so I help people plan for and deal with incapacity and death, which is nice. I help people to organize, to maintain their dignity. However, in addition, clearly I get bored. And so 5 years ago, it just so happens that we started a medical device startup. And the medical device is designed, we are reducing, it's a non-invasive FDA breakthrough medical device designed to reduce core symptoms of autism in children. And so I've been doing that in parallel. So I'm a CEO and co-founder of JelikaLite, and I'm in parallel running the law practice.
Wow, amazing background. Thank you. So I'll turn back to Rachel a little bit. Can you just dive a little bit more into the companies or projects that you're involved in? Because when I first met you, you started rattling off, I'm involved in this and this and this, and it's just incredible, the businesses that you've started. Can you just address each one and tell us, what you do there and how
Sure.
it started? Yeah.
What time is it? Going back to 1994. So very shortly after law school, my husband, who's here, Alain, and I started to buy brownstones in the neighborhood and do gut rehabs. And I, for the past almost 30 years, have been doing all of our interior design architecture, and I grew up in a brownstone, so some of that was very intuitive, and I loved it. And we have grown from there to doing real estate, both in New York and in Pennsylvania, but it was very important to both of us to do social impact development. From the beginning, we knew that that would be a piece of it. So outside of our private sector work, we built the first ground-up domestic violence shelter in the country that allows women to leave with their kids and their beloved pets. An obstacle to leaving an abusive situation is leaving an animal who you love, who you know your batterer is going to torture and harm, and has, either as a means of control or just the sort of sadistic element of that individual. And so having a place where you could go and leave with your animal is a big barrier that gets broken. So we built the first ground-up shelter for women, and there's 100 domestic violence survivors and their kids there every night. And then we built 2 family shelters, each with 165 units. So in the shelters we've built, over 1,000 people are housed every night. And those are family shelters, one in the Bronx and one in Brooklyn, and that involved a lot of skills that come from also being a lawyer. Alana happens to be a lawyer, which have navigating regulations, navigating the city systems, advocacy, negotiation. So even though it's not practicing law, there's a lot of skills that we develop that came into that. And then we also developed the Cat Cafe, which is an animal shelter. So we've had 150,000 visitors. We've had about 10,000 adoptions. We have a low-cost medical clinic that's incredible, that sees hundreds of cats every week. And it's this amazing community space. So I've even bought trafficking survivors who I work with there for Cats and Mats Yoga. So there's community events, there's film nights, there's game nights, there's yoga, and it's an adoption center. And you have people from all over the world there. And I grew up here in Brooklyn, and I love the fact that if you go in there, everybody's there. You know, you have we've had over 100 different countries. You have somebody from Texas, somebody from Borough Park in Brooklyn, or a housing project, and then you have John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, and everybody's sort of in this space together. And this started in our basement. For 6 years, I was fostering kittens. And the amazing thing is, my dear partner and friend in this happens to be a Brooklyn Law School graduate, and she has an MBA also. So she's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, we're doing this. And then 9 years ago, we launched this 9 years ago. 9 years ago, I also launched the largest anti-trafficking coalition in the country, World Without Exploitation. We have over 200 member groups. And it just happens to be that my partner is a Brooklyn Law School graduate also. And so is our policy director. And we have the most amazing youth coalition. We do advocacy, convening people, across the country. We testify, we write legislation, we have an annual summit. We have a youth summit that we had here several years, which was just amazing. And the young people, and they're 16 to 26, so I'm 58, so they are young, and they're on fire. And I could talk more about what that involves, but sort of those are those buckets. And then since October 7th, I've been really involved with a group of amazing women in bringing light to the sexual atrocities that happened on October 7th and in captivity. So I've spent a lot of time with released hostages, families, really working to educate every month, doing some kind of educational series to talk about what happened. And it all sort of interconnects. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's all you do?
I have 3 kids. Well, they're 3 young adults.
So I think what's amazing about your story is just how I'm going to call them projects or companies that you started really developed from your interests, your personal interests, and what you really enjoy the most. And it seems like it grew organically from what you enjoyed doing, rather than perhaps somebody, when you decide to go to law school, you have a very specific decision to go. But these companies were started out of just your personal
Well, I think
growth.
high engagement is really important. If you are really engaged and you're very purpose-driven and mission-driven, to really sustain the amount of work it takes, and I do work all the time, and part of it is I love the people I work with. I really care about those partnerships, and I'm inspired by them. Mm-hmm. And there's complementing talents and skills that people have. And that's something maybe we can go into more about how we sort of choose the people we work with.
Yeah, we will. So Katya, can you tell us a little bit about how you made that jump? I mean, you mentioned about your company, but how did you make that jump from, okay, I'm running a law firm, I'm doing this, but let me focus on a medical device. Can you just walk us through that process?
By accident, but I have a very smart co-founder. So in my law practice, I do estate planning, and it's also a lot of special needs planning. So parents come with children with autism, and when these kids are young and cute, parents still have a lot of hope that things will improve. And by the time, and sometimes they do, and they become fully integrated in life. And then as the kids get older and parents age, the hope is lost. And so I saw quite a lot of it as parents are in the 60s and 70s and kids are in the 30s and parents just know, and there's nothing. And like, in case you don't know about autism, it's now 1 out of 31 in the country. There are no medications, there are no medical devices that are FDA approved to treat core symptoms of autism. So I knew the devastation. I knew, like, I have friends who have kids with autism. Like, I mean, there's nothing. So I have a very smart co-founder who is a long-time friend, and she came up, she reads a lot, and she's a psychologist, but she reads a lot of science, and she read about this technology that could potentially help. Knowing nothing about that point, we knew nothing about FDA, we knew nothing about engineering. Did I mention finance, law? She's a psychologist. She said, there's this amazing study. I think this can really help with autism. And like, well, if it can help, and again, both of us knew there is nothing, and no one is doing anything, why don't we start it? And that is how we started. We formed, again, as a lawyer, right, I can form an LLC, and we learned. I mean, right now I can talk to you about engineering, I can talk to you about regulatory law more than I ever wanted to know, I can talk about HIPAA, I can talk about patents, and I know enough not to do any of that stuff myself, right? Because that is how companies fail, and that is how people lose all their money. So obviously I'm working as a chief legal counsel, but I'm the one raising money. Like, we've raised over 5 million for this startup right now, and obviously raising more all the time, which is the hardest thing that I've done in my entire life, aside from driving in Costa Rica, which is what I do. Yeah, that's, I mean, law practice, again, I like what I do. I think it's useful. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. But there's a lot of lawyers out there, right? I mean, truly, to be fair, like, if you don't go to my office, there are other estate planning attorneys in this audience. And so you can get your trust and your will done with similar. Whereas what we're doing is something new, right? Like, it's something that does not exist, and it's something that can actually impact child's life, family's life, and it works, by the way. Like, in case you care, we've finished 3 clinical trials already. We're working with Mount Sinai now, and SUNY Upstate Medical in Syracuse, and a couple of places in Arizona. It actually worked. Like, it improves the child's life by 20-25%. Core symptoms of autism over the course of 2 months, which for autism is huge. And so I mean, yes, entrepreneurship is hard, raising money is hard, everything is hard, and it makes it worthwhile because you can see the changes, which is quite awesome. So that's how I started.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So for those of us who are mere mortals and mere attorneys, can you, looking back at your education and your background at Brooklyn Law School, I mean, are there certain skills that you learn in law school that you feel prepared you to this life of entrepreneurship? And I'll turn to you, Rachel.
Well, I think the piece that you have a common language, right? So it does get you in rooms that you want to be in. So clearly, on the basic level, I do some policy work that it relates to directly. So you have a law degree, you are doing, reading regulations, reading legislation, drafting bills, in rooms where you're testifying. And so all of that is very sort of, the nexus is really close. But you also have developed writing skills, to write succinctly, to back up what you say. If you're going to make a point, you need to, know how to support it. And sort of whether it's in speaking or writing, how to make a solid argument and also support it. And I think just advocacy skills. I mean, I loved my federal litigation clinic. Doing hands-on work is important. I was with Judge Raji in the Eastern District, being able to see how decisions are made. So I think there's a lot of collateral skills, and we don't often think about how much, sort of how much we get as we sort of pull away from law school and use some of those skills.
Great. How about you, Katya?
I mean, I 100% agree with the writing. And so explaining your point succinctly is definitely, and organizing material, like working with these scientists now, I'm still horrified about how all over the place everybody is. And so putting things properly is definitely helpful. Again, I can't believe it that after so many years, I still like remember law school now and like, oh, this is a contract. And so this will not work. It's not always very helpful being a lawyer, because in fact, sometimes I get this, like, you're talking like a lawyer, start talking like a visionary, start talking like all the beautiful visions. However, it does make me paranoid enough. And so I don't know if you remember Elizabeth Holmes, right? This is not what I want to be. So she has done no favors to women at all, because actually, like, it's funny, except that I sometimes start crying because like I introduce myself, what do you do? I'm a lawyer, I have a medical device startup. Oh, aren't you just like Elizabeth Holmes? Didn't you do that? No, I am not. like seriously. So we, like me and my co-founder, we actually err on this, again, because I don't want to lose my license, I don't want to go to jail, I don't want to lie. And so from that perspective, being an entrepreneur and a lawyer is nice from the risk perspective, not necessarily that useful from the raising money and being super inspirational, but I think I'm able to sleep at night. So from that perspective, just keeping the risks and knowledge is helpful.
And do you feel that you're able to handle challenges as they come, in entrepreneurship? Are you able to overcome them in a way that you find different from maybe your non-attorney peers? Have you found that you approach things differently, or are able to resolve them in a certain way as a result of your legal background?
I mean, I think it just comes with age, right? But yeah, I honestly, I think it's just again, having seen the financial crash of 2008, having seen the financial crash in 2001, having seen like all these companies going up and down, and I think it just, yeah, it just makes you calmer.
Yeah,
as much as possible.
I think some of that's just your character, your resilience, that you see a challenge, a problem, because there's problems in everything. I mean, I think everything we do, whether it's a problem that has to do with the physical structure of a building, or it took us 9 years to build our shelter in the Bronx. It was like incredibly hard in a city that has a housing crisis. But it's being able to think about problem solution, and from those sort of things that don't work out, being able to sort of pivot and figure out how you're going to move forward. So some of that is just that sort of grit, resilience, aspects of, I think, character, and but I do think the piece about being a lawyer, and you talked about it also, is you do look at parameters and information, and you do sort of filter it in a certain way. There's sort of a cogency in a way of thinking.
Analytical skill.
Analytical skill, right.
Yeah.
So that's an analytical skill. And maybe it's the people who go to law school who have those skills. So I don't know that it originates from law school, but we've all chosen to go on that path rather than being dancers, maybe. So
absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about mentorship for a second. So mentorship is a huge issue when you're in law school, and certainly when you're starting out as an attorney. I think most of us at some point or another came across as mentor, and I think that's a big word, because a mentor could be somebody who helps you just for one day. It could be a professor, it could be a dean. It could be someone in career services, or it could be somebody that you work with. But have you come across, can you talk a little bit about whether you've had any mentors in your life that have shaped your direction in some way? Okay, I'll turn to you, Rachel.
I had the most extraordinary mentor, and that was my mother. She was a pioneering social worker. She launched hospice in America. She ran the VA social work department for 40 years in Brooklyn. She so valued mentorship and uplifting. Every staff member had to take a leadership position, had to write, had to publicly speak, and she supported them, she nurtured, she uplifted them. She was a fierce advocate. She was raised in Hell's Kitchen. She was tough but compassionate. She really believed in being counterphobic, that acknowledging she was a social worker, that you could have anxieties and fears, but that by doing, by engagement, by being an advocate. So she was a compassionate listener, a leader, and I grew up with her, and I grew up with these extraordinary social work pioneers. And I grew up here in Park Slope, and these women were amazing. So I feel like in sort of the water of being raised, I came from sort of a politically activist family, and so advocacy was important. And so I would say that was my sort of core mentor, most valued mentor. But she was also a mentor to so many people. At her funeral, there were over 500 people there, and I got stacks of letters about what she gave to people when they were most afraid to step out and be a leader. And I love our youth coalition. We have the most amazing group of people, and I oversee our youth coalition. So I try to also, in addition to talking about their work tasks and what they're doing for Worlds Without Exploitation, but how are they feeling professionally? Do they want to do policy work? What is it that's driving them?
So giving back as well, yeah. How about you, Katya? Have you come across a mentor that was particularly significant in your career?
Career-wise, no. Life-wise, I have to be honest, my co-founder I find to be an absolutely incredible woman. And she's spiritual. She went from a completely secular to Orthodox religion, and so from that I learned about the concept of Lashon Hara, which is do not talk bad about other people unless you absolutely have to. Like if I was about to go into business with you and like somebody knew that she's not an honest person, then you have to tell me. Other than that, don't tell me. And so it's actually good. So from that perspective, yes. Other than that, I've come just across people are willing. I have a mentoring group of attorneys, of estate planning attorneys, and we are all sharing information, discussion, and so I find that to be extremely, technically we're all in competition with each other. Nonetheless, it's such a warm group, lovely group of people that I find it extremely helpful. So my co-founder that I just admire tremendously, and I think when she dies, she'll probably have 500 people there. Hopefully she'll live for another 50 years though, so she's my age, but and the group of attorneys. And then people, to be honest, in the startup world, like some people are just really lovely and some people are just really nasty. And like there are a few
like the legal world. Yeah, both.
That is, yes, that is true. And so there's a few people that I've come across that I'm extremely grateful to, that were there for specific purposes.
So I think what strikes me in what both of you are saying, on top of mentorship, really it's the relationships, the context and the relationships that you've built and how critical it was for each one of your ventures. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you built these networks in your life, and how much of it was deliberate, how much of it organically happened? I think for somebody in the audience who's thinking of, all right, well, let me do something. Maybe you have an interest, or let me build this company. How did you build this network that ultimately became such an important part and a
So I think we've
core
both
aspect?
touched on a really key piece is our collaboration, our relationships, our partnerships. In everything I've done, it's not solo. It's with somebody who I admire, who has a complementary set of skills. We don't have exactly the same set of skills, and but we have a common purpose, a common mission, and we dovetail well together. And since you're in sort of doing the hard work of it, it really makes a difference to collaborate with people. And it's not necessarily one partner or one co-founder. I mean, my co-founders I admire tremendously. But people who are competent, who are generous, who are good listeners, who are really can do and also really low drama. And that's important because as you get older especially, your sort of bandwidth for that is much lower. But, you know, and also knowing what you're like, because I think as lawyers we're very detail-oriented, we may be a little bit more conservative, a little bit less risk-adverse. It's amazing then to connect with somebody who's a real visionary, who maybe has a higher risk-taking profile, who's more entrepreneurial, you know, and then together, like you could sort of tag team a lot of the work. And then I love gathering people. So even in our home, we do a lot of events. I have an event for a Congress member tomorrow night where I have 75 people coming. I do panel discussions where I invite people. I love to bring people together, and I love the sisterhood. I mean, I have 2 sons and a husband and brother, but I love sort of uplifting women and being present.
And that's a core aspect of your businesses as well. I mean,
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. How about you, Katya? How have these relationships? How have you built them?
Networking and following up, right? So just going to a networking event is not enough. You actually have to follow up. So at one point through my coaching, I learned this concept of Team 100. And so you put together a list of professionals that you can refer to, that you actually like, right? Not just random people that you meet, but you actually have tested them, and so you like. And so people know to reach out to me at this point for just about anything. Again, I'm not going to do a personal injury law, but I'll happily refer. I'm not going to do the plumbing, but I'll happily refer. I'm not going to do accounting, but I'll happily refer. And then you follow up. And then separately, I actually have a list of people, individual, that are friends that I make a very strong effort to keep in touch with, right? And so like my kids were laughing as I was putting it together. Oh, who didn't make it on the list? And Mom, why are we not on the list? I'm like, because you're on a different list. I have to see you on a daily basis. And so like it's hard, right? Like it's actually, I mean, I really admire like organizing events. Like my husband would not stand for that because he is antisocial. So
He's very social.
but so I have, and like everyone is so busy, and so you have to make an effort to see people, and I do. And so and it's helpful. It's professionally, socially, there are so many things that are going on. So, but you, like, again, sometimes you just want to crawl and not socialize, and that's just too bad. You have to keep, again, different people for different things. And of course, sometimes my professional clients or professional referral partners become personal friends. But regardless, I have a list personal, I have a list professional, and I actually stay very active on following up with people.
And I think one of the things that you mentioned that I think is key, you know, is the follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is key because it's relatively, you know, step one would be to attend some of the networking events, but really staying in touch, following up, especially for some of us who might not naturally be maybe a social butterfly, just following up is key. So remember that, to follow up with your contacts, to stay in touch. So this is clearly a women leadership circle event with the word women in it, and we have 2 women panelists on the panel. So can you tell us, as women, you know, have you faced any kinds of obstacles, you know, specifically as women, and how did you overcome those obstacles, if you can think of any issues specifically?
I mean, I know this probably isn't helpful, but I've been really fortunate in this way. I think I grew up with sort of a fiery mother, strong. I'm not particularly shy about voicing my opinion and sort of what my boundaries are, and sort of confident in that way. I've been around very egalitarian, non-sexist men through my time at legal services. My supervisors, who were all male, were extraordinary. I think even on the construction sites, we've had the same builders for 25 years. I've never had any sort of negative, you would think, on doing construction and being on job sites. I certainly work with women very closely who have had unbelievable trauma and horrors happen. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've been fortunate professionally to both partner with and be around men who are very comfortable with women who exert power and voice.
Okay. Yeah. And how about you, Katya? You clearly come from a very financial background and then into patents and medical devices. I mean, these are traditionally...
I'm going to complain.
Okay.
So on Wall Street, it sounds funny, I worked for 12 years. I never felt any issues, truly. Like in my first job out of college, I was one woman in a group of 30 guys, and I felt like I was one of their buddies. I got yelled at the same level as they did, whatever, whatever we did, it was all together. I was promoted based on what I did. So seriously, I kept getting no issues on Wall Street. I became a lawyer. I did not see any issues whatsoever. Again, in front of judges, with clients, with other lawyers. I mean, like you said, some people are assholes, some people are not, and it's just like you see women who are not nice, men who are not nice. I did not see any type of issues with being a woman. And then I started JelikaLite, and I started raising money, and I cannot believe the things that I encounter. Like truly, again, I come from Wall Street. I thought all these stories about discrimination against women are absolute woke bullshit. And then you actually encounter it. Yes, 2% of all venture capital money is going to women-founded startups. If you have a woman and a man, it's 12% that is going to venture capital money. All the rest is going to men. And I see, literally, again, we've raised money. I'm relatively successful in this at this point, that $5.5 million is good enough. Given the stage of the company, we should have raised much more. Partly it's probably, again, I blame myself because I speak like a lawyer periodically and I'm way too conservative. But partly it's because people are really, you are presenting, at some point I was like, I'm the diversity in this particular, because I am female out of 25 men who are presenting. It is patronizing industry, in terms of raising money. Other than that, no other. I'm bitter about it, and it is what it is. And the stories you hear are true. I know another woman who's a founder, very successful. She's raised over $40 million. Beautiful woman. She never goes into a room now with a man because she's half the time, instead of talking about that, they offer her sex. We just you would not believe that, and I've had similar types of comments received. Did you really? I'm in my late 40s at this point. I'm a relatively accomplished individual. Did you really just say that to me? So I have encountered that type of things more than I would have ever believed, and you just have to deal with it. Right? And you just have to deal with it and move on. And in terms of dealing with it, I was speaking to another, to a mentor from from a Ivy League institution, and I was I cannot believe that somebody just yelled at me for this. And she's and you're woman number 5 to complain about this particular person, and you should keep quiet. Because if you're the one who is complaining about it, then you will never get any further in your fundraising journey. So suck it up, deal with it, and just keep going. So you have to be better than male-founded companies. You have to cover all of your bases dramatically more and better than male-founded companies. You have to, for every stage, you have to accomplish more, and that's just the way it is. So again, in my 40s, for the first time, I've encountered issues with being a woman. Other than that, just lovely.
And it seems that it was really triggered by the fundraising, when you
The
get
fundraising.
into a sales,
Mhm.
you know, pitch mode. How about you, Rachel? I mean, have you had to do fundraising? Have you faced similar situations when you're going into that kind of pitching, fundraising kind of aspect for your businesses?
I haven't. It's raising money. It's really for a not-for-profit.
Yep.
Right, so it's raising money from individuals, getting foundation grants.
It's a little bit
it's a little
different.
bit of a different sphere.
Yeah.
And I think this is why there are women who are coming together, philanthropists. I'm part of a group called Women Moving Millions, and now they have just expanded to include women who are doing impact investing for other women for this very reason. And they hadn't before. It was just people who were involved in giving money to women and girls. But now it's women who are doing startups, who are doing impact investing.
Interesting. And Katya, have you felt the need to gear your fundraising towards other women, or has that colored your perspective of fundraising at all?
There are some women-founded funds, and I've actually found them to be like, they don't invest at early stage. They invest at much later stage, which is kind of interesting. And again, like, any type of investing is better than no type of investing, so I'm grateful. And again, we've raised venture, we've raised from foundations, we've raised from private individuals. New York State has been really good to us, so like, we've done it all. No, I mean, you just keep doing it the best. And also, I think it's interesting, like, and I was reading about it and I see it myself. Men get asked different questions, and so you have to consciously remember to reposition your answer, right? Men get asked about the vision. Women get asked about the risks. And it's amazing, like, I come in and, you know, you start presenting and then you get asked the questions, and it's all about how you're going to deal with this, and what about this, and what about how have you addressed that, like, in the past, and the risks. And so you have to answer and remember, and this is what it's going to be, the great, bright, shining future that we're going to build. So it's reframing your own mind as well.
Interesting. So, I mean, we've been talking about your respective businesses, and I think I'm just a lawyer, and I've got to tell you, my law practice takes a lot of my time. So how do you each manage to kind of balance? I mean, each one of these projects, each one of these businesses takes up an enormous amount of time, and you have families on top of that. How do you balance? How do you choose, today I'm going to spend time on this? I mean, how do you manage to balance it all? I mean, Rachel.
That's really, it's a tough one, and it's day to day. So oftentimes, he's laughing, right? He's like, she does it at 3 in the morning. I work a lot, but a lot of things are crisis driven. So you're putting out fires, that always takes precedence. So you have to both put out fires as well as do future planning. And again, it goes back to sort of that partnership, that you have to be able to tag out and tag in with people who you can work with. I think that's key. I think figuring out how you form best sort of partnerships and relationships with at the Brooklyn Cat Cafe, my partner Anne is extraordinary. She has just absolutely incredible set of skills. And Lauren Hirsch, Brooklyn Law School graduate also, who co-founded World Without Exploitation with me, we have similar working styles. We work all weekend. I'm up at late at night. She's up in the morning, but we collaborate, and then we could divide and conquer. And then bringing on people who are talented, competent, low drama, can do, proactive, or willing to jump in. So I just think remembering that you're not going solo.
Yep.
Right,
Okay.
that's my COO of our real estate company, she and I do all of our interior design together. We're great partners in that, and she holds down the fort in other ways. We've been working together for almost 20 years. Lauren and I have been working together for 10 years. Ann and I for 10 years.
So the trust.
Our
and the
builders
relation-
for 25 years.
Mhm.
It is that you find people and you nurture those relationships and you hold on to it and make sure that people feel valued and feel seen and that you're respectful and you develop something that's not transactional, that's relationship oriented.
How about you, Katya?
It's day by day. The law practice does take up a lot of time. JelikaLite takes up even more time. My teenager takes up dramatically more time and energy, right? I still have a 16-year-old at home. And so husband takes up some time. Aging parents take up a lot of time as well. And so you just do, right? You just manage. And I do feel like a failure half the time because, right, like there's so many more things that I could be doing, should be doing. I 100% agree. The more you delegate and the more you find good people to give things to, so it's the best. And you just, I mean, like, what choice is there, right? So you just
juggle.
Right, you juggle, you manage, and some days I concentrate more on the law practice, some days on JelikaLite. I did just go away for a week to Costa Rica with my younger one, so I feel like a good mother. And yeah, that's, you just, and you prioritize. And yes, I do sleep. I do sleep, but I also have to work out. I do work out every day, and I do get up at 6 every day, regardless whether it's Saturday or Sunday or a weekday. It's just so much easier like that.
Yeah.
And yes, my clients are like, "Why are you emailing at 12 o'clock at night?" Whenever, does it matter?
So I'm going to throw out a last question, and then I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask a couple questions. So if you had to give one piece of advice to our audience members, what would it be? What is the wisdom that you would pass on?
So I think to remember that purpose, success, accomplishment is not a linear and vertical path. Margaret Mead's daughter, Mary Catherine Bateson, wrote a book called Composing a Life about very accomplished women and how younger women often think that they took a vertical linear path to whatever point they were, whatever arena. And it was anything but. They veered off, they had changed priorities, motherhood became important, and it was okay to pull out for a while. Maybe a path closed and another one opened, and so being open to the serendipity of that, the sort of non-linear aspect of living a life and composing a life is really important, and to get out of that mindset that there's this step and then that step and then that step, because I think most of us don't necessarily anticipate all the amazing things that happen when you sort of change your mindset.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How about you, Katya?
I'm going to be very traditional, and I would say finding a good partner. I think I'm very grateful to my husband, and so for giving the stability, for supporting throughout, for, helping with kids, having that stability and intellectual, emotional partnership is huge. Huge support for just about anything else you want to do, whether take time off to have kids, switch careers, complain about an existing career or whatever else. Having a good partner is extremely important.
Absolutely. So I'm going to open it up to the audience if anybody has questions. Yes, Professor?
Hi. Oh no. I'm Diane Edelman. I'm an alum from before both of you, before all three of you. And I can't tell you how absolutely inspiring your comments have been. I don't know, but I'm willing to guess that a lot of other people here feel as I do right now, like a light has gone on inside, or a joy that maybe we didn't think about. Now, I'm very content with my job here at the law school. Gotta say that. Directing international programs, which is something that I loved when I went here and when it was in the early stages a century or so ago. But I think the way you have told your stories makes us see that things are possible that we might never think were possible. And that many of us in here might now think, oh, you know, maybe that thing I want to do someday, I'll be able to do. And maybe my friend or my colleague so-and-so has a skill that could help me do that, and we could do some great things together. And I just feel like your presentations are along that line and very, very inspiring. So thank you
so much.
I agree, absolutely. We'll take another question if there's.
Hi, my name is Adeniki Williams. I'm an alum as well, and I think, you know, all of you are very inspiring, but I was hoping if you could sort of break down how do you make the decision on what projects to focus on? What's that thing that clicks that makes you go, yes, I think I want to sort of commit my time to this and, you know, pursue this?
So for me, working with people who have been bought and sold in the sex trade and who have suffered through really unfathomable harm and exploitation, came from really listening. I had gotten involved with a project that my partner, my co-founder Lauren, was doing, and I spent 5 years traveling around the country interviewing sex trade survivors about not only what they had lived through, but their expertise, their vision for policy change. And we were then speaking with people who were doing incredible work in silos and were so in the trenches that they couldn't sort of be, you know, work on all the issues that were important to sort of moving the needle legally, culturally, in terms of thinking about the sex trade. And so we just had a spark that there was something missing, which was the connective tissue between all these groups around the country. And part of it is you see a void, you see something that, so all my work before sort of culminated in this domestic violence, working with women in poverty. These were the same populations of people, but their vulnerability led them to be ensnared in the sex trade, in sex trafficked, or in prostitution. So it wasn't planned so much as it was a culmination. The Cat Cafe, like, we busted out of our basement. We fostered 1,500 kittens, and my kids were like, why are people coming at all hours to adopt kittens? And Ann and I, it was, you know, and Ann and I said, we need a community space. We need some place for people to come and gather, because people won't leave. They want to, you know. And then we bought the building. Alana and I bought the building, and it's now this 3-story amazing sort of haven for people and animals. So it comes from within. It comes from maybe something that interested you as a child, something where you lose a sense of time and place, and there's some spark there, and it then culminates through the people you meet and connect with into something that materializes.
Great answer, yeah.
I mean, I just say no to just about everything at this point. I wish, and there's so many interesting things that keep coming up, and actually Warren Buffett wrote about that write 25 things that you would want to do, prioritize, look at the first 5, and then focus on just these 5, and do not even think about, do not even touch, do not even dabble in the other 20. It's very hard. It's so hard because all these interesting things come up. So I have law practice, which for most people is like a full-time job. I have a startup, which again for most people is like a full-time job. So I figure like these two. I volunteer. I actually write letters to political prisoners in Russia, which you know, takes actually, like, it takes my time and it takes a lot of emotional effort. And I have a book club. And that's it. And that, seriously, like, we have our book club for the past 10 years. Like, I make sure, and I yell and I scream, and like, I beat people to make sure that they actually read the books. And we do meet once a month. And and that's as much as, and like, but like, yes, there are all these other interesting things that I would love to get involved with, and I've tried, and then I just like, you just hate yourself because there's only so much that I can do in terms of physical hours in the day. So you have to be fair to other people in terms of commitments. And, you know, so again, like, I've switched careers, right? And I mean, another 5 years and I may switch completely again, and then they'll have an opportunity to do other things as well. But given, while I still have Anna at home, while I still have these two companies, while like there are more and more political prisoners in Russia, and they actually still accept the letters there from outside the country, it's as much as I can do, and I'm not shy now about saying no.
Great, thank you. So I really want to thank our panelists for sharing their wisdom and their experience. It's really has been an incredible experience hearing your respective stories. So thank you very much, and thank you to our audience.
Thank you so much. What an incredible program, what incredible insights, what incredible inspiration. Thank you so much. We're going to move to the cocktail networking part of it, and don't forget to follow up. And thank you for coming. I just wanted to give one shout out to the Legal Association of Women. I think that's what you guys are called, Law, which are a group of phenomenal women law students, budding lawyers, or whatever else you want to turn out to be. But please feel free to meet them, and thank you for volunteering and participating in our program. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and enjoy the rest of the evening.